We're going to just kick this off and try to stay on time because we have an interest and passion about what we're going to be talking about together. So I think today, we're going to be kind of moving through this pretty quickly. And we probably will fill up the 45 minutes that we've been allotted. I'm Allan McLennan. I'm the president and chief executive of Patam Media Group. Many of you know Patam over the years of being a part of IBC and engaged. We have a very, very impactful and influential panel here today to talk about cybersecurity and content under siege. On the far right, we have Gerhard Bullen, who is, I would just call you chief legal counsel of ACE.
Yeah.
You know,
I can live with that.
yeah, it's ACE is basically the legal part of MPA, and MPA is an umbrella group that is part of the Oscars. They watch. They basically are the content security, and then there's the content protection. And the content protection is TPN. With Terry Davis, who's the president in Los Angeles, that's here, and we'll be talking about that too. Next to Terry is Tammy Hoffman. Now, you know, the crowd will fill in here, I'm sure, over the time, but how many of you are familiar with ITN? ITN is
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Over there to you. ITN is impressive to me and what is generated every day and what they have to face on an everyday standpoint when it comes to protecting their content. Next to Tammy right here is Andy. Andy Livingston, who's the basically director of technologies of the EMA of Sony Pictures. And what currently is going on within their organization is quite impressive. In fact, what they're having to face is daunting, that they're having to secure their content. And next to me, and certainly last but not least, is David Orman, who's the CEO of Greenfish. And I want to ask real quick, how many of you are aware of Greenfish? Okay, other than Stephen. Hey, in the course of that, I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit about what your vision is and where things are with Greenfish, because it's another process to secure things up. But to kick this off, I wanted to really take a look at, what are the specific threats that are currently taking place in news content? And I purposely brought up ITN because IPM produces the news, basically, if I'm correct, for the UK in many different ways for the networks every day. And Tammy, one of the things that you're having to face is disinformation and how it's being approached within your organization to be able to bring it out into the market. Tammy and I have been working for the last 9 months on something within the Accelerator group you may hear of, that we're going to be presenting on Sunday morning about disinformation, misinformation, and a little bit about that. Every day there's 35 million fake news reports that come out. That's massive currently right now. A lot of AI, a lot of activity, a lot of manipulation of the content that pushes it out. So is it true? Is it real? And that's really the bottom line of where the industry is moving towards, is what we're seeing. Is it real? Does it have the actual approval to be seen? Tammy, what are you witnessing right now every day within disinformation?
Well, I mean, newsrooms have always been quite good. Disinformation is nothing new, I should say. Right. It used to be called propaganda. It's not new. I think that what's different now is the sophistication of it through AI. So newsrooms are quite good at sifting through information and going back to sources to work out what's real and what isn't. But I think that the change has been to what's happening to the general information ecosystem. That trust is being eroded because it's so much easier to create convincing fakes. And this is having an impact in so many different ways. It's having an impact politically, and we've seen various elections being destabilized in one way or another by fake pictures. There's an economic impact. We've seen how fake stories have kind of moved money markets. But to me, the really key bit is around trust and what it's doing to our audiences and the whole nature of news. That if you don't trust the pictures you see as being real, what future does news have? What differentiates us from anyone's hot takes from their bedroom? And I would say that a kind of the flip side of that is we're also now entering a world of plausible deniability, that if anything can be fake, If something is genuinely kind of unearthed about you and you don't like it, you just turn around and say it's fake news. So it's massive for us.
So it's created a whole new type of behavior as far as accepting the content.
Yeah.
Which really brings up kind of the question when it comes to the fake, the copyright of content at this time. As soon as it's touched by AI, I've learned from the legal counsels in Los Angeles, as soon as it's touched by the AI, they're saying that that version now is owned by the pirate, if they've done that kind of work. Gerhard, you've been looking into this and being able to address it from the MPA standpoint.
Yeah, when it comes to artificial intelligence, there's a lot of moving pieces, and there's definitely on the legal side uncertainty. I think especially in the US, I know that the Copyright Office has looked into the issue. They are starting to produce documents and reports. The first kind of document that came out was on digital replica, so we're really focusing on deepfakes. But when we look in the EU, I think we are already a few steps ahead. A couple of months ago, we had the AI Act regulation being accepted in the EU, which sets out a whole bunch of rules when it comes to artificial intelligence. And copyright is a really important part of it. There's a specific article, there are many recitals in this regulation that talks about the respect for copyright. So when it comes to AI, you always have to look at the principles of copyright, and one of them, it's an exclusive right, is that the author needs to approve the reproduction or the adaptation of the content. So if you use copyright-protected content to produce new content, obviously you need to have authorization from the original author. So the basic principles of copyright still apply, definitely in the EU, and we will see over time, of course, how these things develop. But we already have certain enforcement cases going on. There's actually a very good example from the Netherlands. The local content protection organization called Brain, they took down a data set which was used for training AI models, basically to generate new content. And they discovered a data set with more than 10,000 ebooks in Dutch, with subtitles of all the movies and TV content, with millions of lines of news articles, obviously without authorization from the original authors. So that's a perfect example of how AI can be misused for large language models. And an interesting note there, they did a search in this data set, and more than 10,000 times it said none of the content made available in this work can be reproduced. So it was more than 10,000 in there. So you can see that the basis of that model was really, of that data set, was really copyright protected content.
Yeah, but I think that raises the point is like, that's accepted, and they're not respecting the copyrights. And pirates don't do that. Mm-hmm. They're just going to take it and be able to take it out into the marketplace however they want to be able to present it, and the audience is going to engage it. Terry, could you please play the video for us from the APA?
When you pirate movies and TV shows, you're inviting dangers into your home you can't even see, like exposing your devices to malware, putting your personal information at risk, or surrendering your privacy. Often, it's even funding crime syndicates at the expense of innocent people. Stream safely to protect your identity, protect your devices, and stop the flow of resources to organized crime. Because pirated content is never really free. Visit streamsafely.com to learn more.
This is a great educational tool. I mean, have you been putting it out into the marketplace from the standpoint of bringing the attention? I mean, everybody knows it's a pirate content. Really, honestly, if it's not costing anyone, it's free, they really don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so that was produced by Motion Picture Association, whose members, of course, are the 6 major studios, and the Trusted Partner Network and the ACE, Alliance for Creativity and Entertainment, programs within MPA. So MPA is very, very focused on getting every possible message out. I work proactively with service providers in the industry who are working predominantly on pre-release content. Gerhardt sort of comes in and cleans up when there's an incident, right, and does the research and deals with the incident and prosecutes the bad actor. So MPA is looking to get the message out. Our rating system, you'll all know MPA from the ratings on the movies. It's designed to protect the audience. So MPA is very, very focused on keeping every aspect of content safe.
And why don't you, we've known it with the MPA, with ACE, and so we'll explain a little bit about how TPN really works, into the system as a whole. I've recently, for the last year and a half, been the president of a post-production facility in Hollywood, and that was something along the lines of how we looked at, being TPN Gold was a qualifier with the studios. Tell us a little bit more about TPN.
So the Trusted Partner Network sprang up back in 2018 when all of the vendors who did work for multiple studios were tired of going through a security assessment multiple times per year for each studio. So somebody said, well, what if we did one industry, one security assessment? And that basically is TPN. So we stand for Trusted Partner Network, meaning that anybody who's been through our security assessment is trusted to some degree. And we make all of that information available to the studios plus. So the MPA studios, I'll see if I can do it, right? Keep me honest, Andy. Sony, Disney, Netflix, Paramount, Warner, NBCU. Yes. But in TPN, we also have Amazon Studios, as does ACE, Apple Studios, BBC Studios, Canal Plus Group, anybody who creates content who has to worry about the security of that content, particularly pre-releases, as they're putting it out to their different vendors around the world. So we make the security assessments available to each of those content owners from which they make their own independent risk-based decisions, because obviously, a catalog title is very different to pre-release, and each studio will have a different view on their risk profile.
What do you, Andy, since you're brought up with Sony, what are you facing right now? I mean, is that critical for you, or are you really locking the content down?
It's absolutely critical for us, and it's a challenging time for content protection because there are so many threats, and because the nature of the industry has changed to bring a lot of new circumstances that we're having to adapt to. If we looked at a pre-COVID world, we didn't have things like premium video on demand and earlier windows to go into people's homes, which you now have to worry about and look after and secure. We look at the number of providers in the market, which continues to actually increase globally, and more people are coming on board. And so there's more routes of attack, there's more places you have to try and secure. And also because everyone has more and more devices and more platforms. We heard in the previous session about how many more TV platforms are out there, how they're not really consolidating down. And we have to try and secure those and try and make sure the content doesn't leak out of them. And that's a challenge. But I think the kind of good news on that front is that we have seen, I think, over the past 5 or 6 years, a gradual shift in that I think there used to be a little bit of an attitude of the big bad studios handed over a security list, and everyone kind of looked at it and groaned and went, okay, we will do this, to a much more wide industry awareness that this is in everyone's interest. This is about helping maintain revenue and stopping piracy for everyone across the entire chain. And as the market has moved on, everyone is a little bit more revenue focused and profitability focused than they used to be maybe 10 years ago. And that is for the good, I think, and is sort of moving things in the right direction.
Well, I mean, revenue focused, I mean, it's kind of what has always been the case with studios. And so at this time, every percentage is something that's really important of how we're going to be and approach it. But have you had any intrusions? Do you have any examples of different types of content that you've had to really go out and
well, I mean, I think, it is the nature of the business that eventually most content does leak, and we have to try and slow that down the best we can.
Where's the leak come from, typically?
For new features, very typically it is hard to secure physical releases, and that's sort of usually the point at which a feature would go out. But because we are doing more of these premium VOD services earlier in the film window, sometimes they are very tempting targets for pirates, because the sooner they can get them, there's more prestige and there's more incentive for them to do that. So we have to be kind of very careful to lock those down the best we can. We have tools like forensic watermarking and other bits of security we can apply from that. But in a way, the premium VOD window launched under non-ideal circumstances because of COVID. We would have probably rather had 5 years to kind of figure that out than we actually did. And now we have to go back and retrofit some of the things we maybe would have liked to have had at the time but didn't get ready.
But all of that you're trying to get ready, are you really then integrating ACE and integrating TPN as that process to secure things?
I think it's all part of one long ecosystem chain, right? I mean, the kind of great work that Terry does is about preventing leaks before things are released. My job is to try and slow down the availability on pirate services when things are going to people's homes as much as possible. And then when things do eventually get out there and leak, it's Gerard's job to help us get rid of those pirated sources as best we can and take down as much as possible to minimize availability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I may, we see it very much as a sort of 360 process between TPN and ACE, because if ACE has an incident, you do root cause analysis. I work with ACE on the root cause analysis to make sure the MPA best practices are then, if we're missing whatever it was that happened, we shore up the best practices and around again we go, right? So it's a very 360, we call it 360 strong approach.
Mm-hmm. And zero trust. Being able to recognize that every piece of content's available on the market unless it's secure.
Well, I just came from a panel actually where we were working with Movie Labs on zero trust, which is, of course, the principle is trust nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it comes back to the disinformation that we've been working on with Tammy. Is it real? Is it true? And that's something that, coming back to content sharing, quote unquote, pirate sharing is, if it's free, it's probably something that's not exactly available and should be available. And that comes back down to FAST, and how do you really, you're doing some things in FAST at this time. And, that's content that's being pushed out there, and it's free, but it's old television, basically.
Well, it has been old television historically. I actually think one of the interesting things that's happening in the market, and to toot Sony Pictures' horn a little bit, I think one of the things we have driven a little bit with some of our availability is that movement away from some of our fast services being perceived as old content that maybe nobody else was looking for really, to being quite high value services actually. One of our fast channels has Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul on it, and a kind of selection of quite high-profile cinema titles and high-end drama. And at that point, the protection of those channels becomes more relevant and more important, and we're looking for that same level of content protection and digital rights management there that we would have had for a traditional subscription VOD service, because we want to protect that value in that content to the same extent. And I think also there are other threats to the fast model which are going to become more and more apparent over time. We look at how pirates are leeching content directly from services' CDNs. And so if they crack the encryption or crack the authentication, they can pull that content along, wrap it in their own advertising, and they have this perfect pirate service where they keep all the revenue, but someone else pays their distribution costs. It's the best scam in the world. Right. And content protection is one of the ways you can mitigate that. And I think it'll also join in with kind of some of Tammy's efforts in looking at how you maintain the integrity of those services, right? If someone's cracking those services to replace the advertising, maybe they're cracking the services to replace the bulletin with a fake bulletin they prepared with misinformation on it. And I think that's something as an industry we're going to have to be quite aware of in the next few years.
It kind of prompts a question when it comes to like Web3 and blockchain technologies have really advocated being highly secure, but at the same time, in your experience, this is completely off track in some ways, have you seen any pirates actually put in other advertising versus the fast advertising that's typically streamed? I mean, have you seen
pirate sites?
From pirate sites, have pirate sites embraced fast?
Well, it's display ads first and foremost, I think, in the pirate sites, especially in sport. If you think
certainly
about
in live sport, you see that, yes,
Yeah.
with people kind of wrapping their own advertising around live
So,
streams.
so you're saying right now that the pirates actually have an advertising group that are developing that and having that as an ancillary revenue stream besides just the viewing of the content?
That's a 10-year
Yes.
problem, to be honest.
Yeah,
It's
it's been going on.
not a new problem. Yeah, it's absolutely an issue.
There's
Because
billions and billions and billions of views on pirated sites that are being monetized through very low value advertising. So it enables anybody to advertise on the internet. You can find these sites. You've got live stream sports. So everybody's coming together. They're bringing them to instant messenger chats and stuff on the side, so people are staying on those channels and interacting with each other while they're just serving them ads. And there's so many phishing links in those experiences, you're never really sure as a viewer if you're safe watching in that environment or not.
Right.
The fact is, are there ways for you to inhibit access to those streams? They're pulling them out the CDN networks. That's some very technically advanced people that are doing that.
Yeah, you have to think so. I mean, as far as like advertising in and of itself is actually not embraced, but even low value advertising, that you're saying is also like another area of phishing that's actually going to the devices.
You can click on anything on the internet, you don't know where it's going to take you.
Right. Well, we all know that.
And that was actually my first experience in blockchain. Was in a blockchain streaming technology business I joined initially as a consultant. And the first thing I found was I was in this kind of cowboy market where my name and my email address had been replicated, and my Telegram name, it was being sent out to people saying, invest in this project, click on this link, send your Bitcoin in. And I had no idea this was going on until you literally look on Twitter and people are talking about you on Twitter. And it's quite a strange moment when you think you're a professional doing a professional job in the media industry, and all of a sudden you're part of this completely new world of crypto bros that are just finding ways to scam fundamentally.
And that's where you came up with the idea with Green?
So Greenfish wasn't my idea. Greenfish was the idea of a lady called Tracy Mitchell, who some of you may know. Tracy spent 25 years in broadcast. She's a solution architect, a broadcast architect, always managing media inside of big TV stations across the world. And Tracy kind of met the blockchain about 7 years ago and almost wanted to take a step away from media because she was always bringing innovation into the media industry. Things always evolve. Technology is evolving at a more rapid pace than it ever has done before. And when Tracy kind of laid out what was happening when you take a piece of media and you want to control that from pre-production all the way through to D2C distribution, you're constantly moving the media around. And every time you move the media around, that is a security, exposes potential threats to your security. So when I first met Tracy, my experience is broadcast and sport, and then investing, and then I was running a consultancy business looking at innovation. And my whole thing was about how do you take innovation into mass market consumption. And I'd done the blockchain thing, and I'd seen the kind of cowboy market. I was working with a Premier League soccer player on an NFT around his dog, which he wanted to make millions of dollars from. And I was like, I'm done with this blockchain stuff. It's nonsense. In comes Tracy Mitchell saying, you've not thought about this properly. If we can use the next generation of technologies, which not only increase security, significantly reduce costs, put the IP in the hands of the IP owners at all times, they can then make more money from their content. And I said, it's just not possible. Right. And she laid it out for me on a schematic. And she said, you can bring this all together. And what you do is we're actually launching at the end of this year with a very basic MVP of what we're going to be building longer term. But the idea is if we're using the Illuvio content fabric,
sure.
So we're using this new streaming technology, which is absolutely game-changing in what they've done. The reduction in cost, the security, the inbuilt AI, the anti-piracy technology that they're working with Nagra. We were consulting with Illuvio. We brought them the EPCR deal, the Bedrock streaming deal that they're announcing here at IBC. That came through some Greenfish introductions. And we tested Illuvio. We wanted to see it work, and I was blown away, having been in streaming for years. I was going, this is the next evolution of how content will be streamed to consumers, or potentially B2B as well. So what we're doing with that is we're kind of saying to people, you can't transform big business. You can't go into Sony Pictures and say, we're going to completely disconnect all of your current technical infrastructure and replace it with this new wizardry technology.
I mean, hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Yes.
That takes time, and it takes money and resources. Yes. So what we're trying to do is give everybody a very simple kind of step into the world of Web3. Take a file, put it into your library, powered by Greenfish, where you retain ownership of the IP, the data, and the finances, wherever that content gets distributed across the internet. And this whole point about moving the media, you don't actually need to move the media between counterparties if it resides within your library, you can access permission to all the people within your supply chain. And therefore, it doesn't move, you reduce security risks, and you're constantly in control of it. And that's fundamentally what we're trying to do with the technology.
Yeah. You know, 2G was part of that overall architecture recently, and it's been announced yesterday as far as the workflow component called Core. And that taps right into what you're talking about, being able, that's preceding all of that effort with the content. So the content's all done is what we're talking. But now within Hollywood, for example, there's the effort that is going into play when it comes to securing the content prior to it moving to you and moving into Alluvio's blockchain architecture. And so having that kind of security, do you think that's going to lock it down from?
Well, it's been amazing.
It changes the entire architecture that Sony has been looking at, and it starts really relying on the protection architecture from the MPA as far as how you work that. Is it stepping out of that now?
So what we've seen is, kind of our route to market is very much, there's 400 million content creators out there. Now their content to them is as valuable as Sony Pictures is, you know, your content is to you. So there's a massive market. You've got brands and creative agencies, you've got independent production companies, and as you kind of go up this pyramid, you go all the way up to rights holders and big broadcasters. Now everybody within that pyramid has a problem storing, managing, distributing, monetizing their content. And everybody wants to own their fans so they can monetize them more. So what we've found is we've got big productions companies joining us at launch, we've got global brands, we've got some independent music companies and these content creators. They all want a different way to control their own destiny. Now, one of those test partners that we're going to be launching with is an AI production company. So they're making Hollywood movies, Hollywood-grade movies within 6 weeks with a budget of $100,000 purely on AI. And what they were telling us is the AI is advancing so quickly that you could make the next version of Pirates of the Caribbean in a factory. You could have 1,000 different versions of this movie being automatically created by machines and spat out across the internet. And the studios are currently looking into this kind of new threat of actually, will the viewer be more entertained by the fake version than the real version of that movie?
Well, it depends on the viewer. You know, it all comes down to, and I think you just kind of identified something when it comes to Hollywood quality. Because the AI-generated content that I have seen, while amazing, especially when it comes to human voice manipulation and being able to implement what you might be able to do, it's just not there. But like any other technology, it's a process, and it's going to be becoming more real, which comes back to fake news and representation.
Yeah. Well, so we've been dealing with the threat of synthetic media in a slightly different way.
Synthetic media,
which is going back to the idea of provenance and being able to prove that something's real. And it ties in with your blockchain thing. We've partnered with a UK startup company called Open Origins, who are anchoring our archive onto the blockchain. So this is an archive of news footage that dates back to 1955. It's an extraordinary repository of British cultural history. And we feel that we have a really kind of small window before the world gets sort of swamped with synthetic media for us to essentially convert all of the elements from that archive into hashes and store them on a couple of parallel nodes on the blockchain. And the reason that we think that this is going to be important is because although we can usually go back and sort of verify one particular asset as being real or belonging to us, we can kind of put enough data together to show where it was produced and by whom and when it went out. If you look at our archive as an asset, as something which is a really important revenue stream for us, being able to have this kind of marker in time of being able to say, we've authenticated this on the blockchain. We can verify that this was all human-created news content. It has two really brilliant factors for us. One is to do with trust. That's, you know, the USP of any public sector broadcaster. You can trust our news. But secondly, as we move into this world, and it ties in with your point about our content being illegally scraped as training data for large language models, we do think that there will be a world where actually being able to prove that your content is not synthetic will have a greater value if we ever get into a world of good licensing in the AI market. And we don't quite know where that's going. It's a bit of a punt on where the future goes, but we think it's a really prudent step and a practical step that we can be taking now to kind of safeguard ourselves to the point where hopefully when the legislation kicks in and AI companies actually start respecting copyright laws, that we can say, hey, this archive has a higher value because we can prove it's not synthetic.
You know, you just said something though that just the AI companies respecting copyright. That just is, in my opinion, just not going to happen. You know, I mean, the pirates. You know, where this really kind of comes into play.
I mean, they're not respecting it at the moment, but I think
they're only going to respect it unless they get in trouble.
But it's still very nascent where we are at the moment, and I think if you're going to, as an AI company, a lot of the AI companies, we haven't really seen where the value of it is going. But if at some point we move to a world where they are creating products that they want to sell to people to use, whether it is creating a Hollywood-style video, the company buying it on the other end is going to want some sort of indemnity somewhere down the line that the product they're buying stands up. And for that to stand up, they have to be able to prove that they trained it on something that they had the rights to train it on. We're not there yet. But we kind of have to hope that we will get there at some point. Yeah, but that you raised like C2PA. Are you subscribing within that community in itself? So C2PA, it's a provenance thing. It came out of a thing called Project Origin, which the BBC have been sort of first movers on, but they've partnered with Adobe and various other organizations. And it's trying to find a kind of universal provenance format where metadata can stay with the footage right the way through the value chain. I would say that we're peripherally involved. We've got some reservations about it, around the costs and around the sort of heaviness of the data when all that metadata is there, and the fact that its reliability, but we absolutely applaud their efforts in trying to find a universal scheme and wish everyone the very best of luck in making it work. It's an effort like herding cats, you know, getting everybody together on it. Terry, are you looking into that as well within CT?
Very, very early days for us. We will be introducing...
But that's protection. That aspect is all about protection, and that's what TPN does.
Right, that's right. So we're republishing the best practices in December. We'll have some light best practices around AI and ML that will go in, but you know, there's much more conversation to have. I mean, remember, for me to add anything to the best practice, I need to align 8 Hollywood studios to get agreement before anything. You're so right. So it takes me a little while. In fact, we've done really well, I think, to get something in by December. Yeah.
But on the content protection side, artificial intelligence is already something that is being used. I mean, we have at our disposal tools that we have developed ourselves internally within ACE to also fight piracy. You have machine learning to recognize certain patterns. You have evidence gathering, automation. These are all things that we use on a daily basis already. And I think the integration with TPN in that respect is also very important, because data that comes from the platforms directly, if they recognize certain compromised elements that deserve attention, that can then be also analyzed by ACE, and together we find then a solution how to take action against the bad actors. Because ACE has the advantage of the power of the numbers. We have more than 50 rights holders all over the globe, so there's a lot of information coming our way. And by finding the right way to handle that big data, we're also able to take action against those infringers in various ways: litigation, criminal referrals, whatever is at our disposal. And have you been launching any kind of cease and desist currently? Have you put some letters out? Is that being respected? When it comes to like content security, where we have a direct connection between TPN and ACE, we actually have a very live case about a hacker based somewhere in the Middle East. I'm not going to name the country.
Go ahead.
Which is responsible for compromising platforms of various of our members, and actually has been selling assets, selling content online via Telegram groups, etc. And we're really talking about premium content, pre-release content that has to be released in 2026. But it's already snippets pieces is out there. So we would never be able to find that person without the information from the platforms, because they see things happening. They see what is wrong on, where there are critical incidents. And then we use that information to develop the investigations. We use open source information and finally find the person. So that's actually a pending criminal investigation, which is very, very relevant today.
And it's happening right now.
Yes.
And it comes back to, now we're talking about future technologies and how technologies are going and having a response. It's taken time to the industry to get to a point where it's always been, well, it's pirated, it's, how do we address this? And there's cease and desist, and NAGRA has had a tremendous watermarking effort when it comes to working with, BN and, how things are locked down and addressed. But it's still not at the pace of the growth of the industry and the consumption by the audience. They're interested in so much new content. New technology, when it comes to like the ability from a compute power with quantum, is that just like so far out that we really should be looking at it, or is that a current need? Like the IEEE is all over quantum.
Honestly, I think it probably is too far into the kind of medium-term future to be an immediate threat. I think trying to mitigate against quantum cryptography is, at this point, it is such a heavy burden to do. The kind of post-quantum cryptography approaches we have are sort of actually improvement in the real world, because no one's really built these quantum breaking computers, right? So you don't really know if they'll work. And B, they're quite heavy to use, they're cumbersome, they'll possibly degrade the user experience. And so I think we're at kind of 3 qubits roughly now today. If you wanted me to put a terrible finger in the air, right, we might be looking at 25 years before this becomes
So
a
it really
real
doesn't
threat.
matter at this
And
time.
if you are still using the same assets encrypted in the same way on your sitting on your CDN for distribution 25 years from now, I'd be very surprised, because you have threats to those things today. You have very traditional hacking approaches. You have people going after your authentication systems. You have key management software attacks on end user devices. And I think you're better spending your time and resource fixing those and looking at your systems and trying to secure those in more traditional ways today. But I also think it's good to have a strategy in mind for if I have a breach or an attack on my systems next week and I need to re-encode my content with new keys, how am I going to do that? And what's my strategy? It's a disaster recovery piece, really, in a way.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do. It's not necessarily cheap to do, but I think as a service, it's good to have that plan in place.
And as a future technology, it seems like what David explained and how you have identified this, and how this all works together, it's today. And trying to change behavior of the industry to embrace a new way of doing things, which is part of the constraint that's being faced within the organization. Blockchain had a pretty bad rep, a number of years ago. So as soon as you say it, it's like there's a certain, guttural response.
There's a confusion between the crypto market and the NFT market that came in afterwards. They basically tainted a new technology that was out there. And you talk about decentralization of data and storing a ledger of permanent information that can never be taken down or amended or adjusted in any way. That's hugely advantageous for certain industries. So there's lots of blockchain examples in the financial services industry.
There is.
It's heightened security. You're not putting all your data within one central place, which can be attacked by through multiple different sources.
Healthcare too.
Healthcare, absolutely. And I think when we're looking at the Greenfish solution, what we're trying to do is actually connect the content itself with the metadata that is connected to that content, and then the financial flows, both B2B and direct to consumer, through one ecosystem. That's fundamentally the vision that Tracy Mitchell had when she first started Greenfish. She's like, that's just one supply chain. And if you connect ownership to the media and the financial flows through one ecosystem, you then control your own media.
It's fascinating. Terry, have you been looking at blockchain within TPN?
No, that's a 2025 initiative for us.
Are you free on January the 2nd?
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Is that here in London or?
Anywhere.
Yeah.
The global.
Yes. Well, it all comes down to, how everything I'm hearing right at the moment is how do we educate the market to reject the content that's being pirated and distributed, not just securing it from a blockchain standpoint.
But I think that's the thing that when you're talking about it, it's like there's so many different ways in which that content's being pirated today, and then you're going after these bad actors. I think when I was working in sport, and I was working for a football club with the Formula One owners, and then we got this legal letter coming in from Africa saying that somebody had replicated our new kits with our sponsor on, and they were making loads of money selling Queen's Park Rangers kits in Africa, somewhere in Africa. And we obviously called in the lawyers and we said, we have to stop them. How do we stop them? And then you kind of took a step back and you went, this is actually increasing the potential revenue for our business. So if we allow this pirating, this illegal theft to go on.
Now, who was making that decision?
This was not for a mic'd conversation.
Right.
I had very interesting owners of the football club at that time.
Huh.
And what I was basically saying to them was, now we've got another X hundreds thousands of shirts being distributed across Africa. Our sponsorship value and our value in this other commercial revenue stream can actually potentially go up. We can now legitimately say to a sponsor coming in, we've now got your brand worn by this many people in Africa, which we didn't have previously. Now, the revenue we could have made from selling those shirts with our margin that we would have made would have been under the sponsorship revenue that we generated as a result, potentially generated, I should say. But it kind of gets me thinking around the pirated content, and you cannot ever stop somebody's screen recording. You might find the source of who was the initial person to copy that screen and then redistribute it.
We can definitely make it harder, though.
We can make it harder.
Which, we do try and do.
But there are ways in which you as a content owner using blockchain technology can actually find a way to take some money back from those people who are stealing your content through smart contracts, which is something we're working on next year. But also, there are other ways in which you want to monetize your audience as an entertainment business. There are other ways in which you want to monetize your fans. And if you have a direct relationship with those fans, you might lose the revenue, from one pocket, but it might be generated elsewhere.
But I think that's problematic if it's bad faith actors who are doing this. I mean,
Yeah,
one of the problems that we've
you're
had, one of the
legitimizing
biggest
their
AI
action.
threats to us is people using the images of trusted news presenters to try and flog commercial products. So, I mean, it's fairly low quality, the ones that we've seen, but if you're watching it on your phone and somebody's, done a reversion of the ITV news set and they're trying to get Mary Nightingale to sort of tell you that this app is going to save you loads of money and go buy it now, that's not somebody that we can claim the money off at the other end.
No, that's totally different. So that's obviously just fake content. And the provenance of that needs to be proved, that this wasn't created by ITN or ITV, and it's a piece of fake content. You need to find that across the internet and stamp it with "this is fake." Only stupid people actually believe that stuff is from Martin Lewis or whoever it is that you see on Twitter.
Yeah, but I mean, Martin Lewis, for those of you who don't know, Martin Lewis is a sort of financial guru in the UK who's built his reputation of being impartial about his financial advice. And his image keeps getting co-opted by companies trying to use a fake image of him to flog financial products. He's spent a huge amount of time and energy talking to the platform saying, you've got to take down my image, you've got to find these videos, you've got to take them down. And he is not getting the help that you would want from those platforms. And I think there's a real question about who has to take responsibility for this. And it feels at the moment that all the onus is on us, the content creators, and we could really do with a hand from some of our distributors to help us in this fight.
And I think you just said it. I mean, there's a really brilliant, from IDER, Will Kreth, spun out and developed an overall identity protection service called HAND that's getting really solid traction within the US as far as how do you do exactly what you just said when it's been misrepresented or shaped, that it calls it out and is able to then get back to the owners to say this is taking place. Interestingly enough, it's more of the acting community that's signing up for this service to protect themselves, especially after the SAG-AFTRA strike. This has become very top of mind. And so that is what is currently that kind of protection. you know, we're at a time when we're just starting to get going on the discussion. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this because we covered a lot of ground in discussing what could possibly be. Our content is under siege, you know, and how we protect that and how we move forward is something really critical. And I hope you agree with this discussion that we just had. Thank you, panel.